Welcome to the 2-Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books. I forgot my intro. This is a podcast. Okay. Welcome to the 2-Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%. And we should take one giant book, break it down section by section, bit by bit, talk about it, analyze it, have fun, try and make people laugh. And this season we're doing ARDOR by Vladimir Nabokov. And I am Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox.
Hey, Chad. I had to tell you, I've been telling people about this book and the podcast we're doing, and they get really excited like when they hear it's a Vladimir Nabokov book. Like, oh, what are you reading? And I tell them Ada or Ardor, and they're like, oh. It's like they're really excited it's going to be Lolita or Pale Fire, and when it's not either one of those, oh.
That's funny because that's kind of the whole point of the podcast. It was like the books that you would otherwise just be like, I can skip that. That's too long.
Well, we're going to do Michelle Obama's Becoming next because that'll get us some people to follow, maybe.
We should do Barack Obama's memoir, volume 1, his My Struggle.
Is that what he's doing? Extra volumes and stuff?
I think it's 2 volumes and they're each 800 pages or something.
Well, it's like his speeches, right? Nice and long.
Nice and long. At a time in which we don't have paper, which is super cool. There's a paper shortage and no one can print anything very fast, and everyone's working on Obama's book.
I know, a shortage of paper and a shortage of bullets, apparently. Everybody is like everybody took their stimulus money and they bought guns, and we're out of guns, and now we're out of bullets because everyone's gearing up.
Yeah, either that's part of it. The other part is the cops just can't stop shooting people.
Apparently, they don't have a shortage.
They don't have a shortage.
No, so I thought it was very, very amusing that I was teaching a class and talking about this book, and they were really excited and then not excited when they heard the title because it's like, oh, I haven't read that one, and I'm probably not going to read that one. So
but you didn't lead with the fun part. What you lead with is it's a book about incest.
Yeah, exactly. Insects.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, just sort of like incest, but a couple different letters. So
just in case, since we're talking about running out of bullets and people buying guns, can you explain maybe just in case we have a couple of new listeners, 3% podcast? Or 3%. What like that? You need to explain that because you're from Michigan, right?
I am from Michigan.
So tell me this 3% thing real quick, just to make sure I don't want to join anything I'm not comfortable with.
I also was at Michigan State the same time that Governor Whitmer was.
Oh, cool.
It's always, I looked that up because I was like, this person seems like quasi-familiar in a way. And then I looked, I was like, we were there at the same time. I doubt we ever met, but like, she's like my age and all that. So the 3% website comes from the statistic that out of all the books published in America in a given year, approximately 3% of those have been translated from other languages into English. It was initially used this was first like kind of reported in like 2006-ish, 2005-ish, through more as like a semi-accurate number rather than just a guesswork. But we used it because it would bring attention to the fact that there was a severe lack of books in translation that were being published. And then the 3%ers came along saying that like, what's their claim? It's like 3% of like the militia killed everyone in the Revolutionary War, some nonsense. It's like something really random. But they're like a crazy gun-toting militia, people who want to kidnap governors and sow dissent.
Okay.
We are not them. They used to be, because our website was first and was so much more popular than that stupid movement, no matter what you put in for 3%, you would be led to our website. And then there'll be like an article in the New York Times about the 3%ers. And all of a sudden, all of our pages, we go to the bottom of the Google search. And we have to fight our way back up because thankfully they don't have the staying power. Yeah, I said that. You're shooting blanks there, 3%ers. Go fuck yourself.
I am next to positive not a single militia member will ever listen to an episode about translated literature or Vladimir Nabokov. Not gonna happen.
They're trying to find out about the enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
We gotta scope this out. Yeah, come to my bunker. Yeah. Anyways, how are things going for you? Anything new?
No, nothing new. Just hanging out and not going anywhere, not doing anything, and just eating groceries out of my refrigerator. That's about it. That's the life, man.
That's the life, kind of.
Yeah.
Oh man. So should we get into this? So we left off with the hint that
The letter. It was the purloined letter.
The purloined letter.
That wasn't purloined, but yeah, the letter.
That Van had received a note in his pocket that it essentially indicated that Ada wasn't being faithful to him.
Yeah.
And she denies it and is like, whatever. But then the next day, he is approached by Blanche. We'll just take this chapter by chapter, I guess. So the next day, he's approached by Blanche, and she's like, yo, I know you want to bang me. Like, let's get this on. Like, let's screw. Also, Ada's been banging multiple people. Like, she's been all up on Mr. Rack, which was the one that I had guessed at, of the music teacher. And then the second one, I had a lot of questions about Mr. Rack. And then she had done it with the guy. I want to say Pete Lapoy, but that's wrong. What is his real name? No.
Percy Dupre.
Percy Dupre. And that she had banged him too. So
and he's off to valiantly fight on the front.
Yeah, in this mysterious war that's like World War
I, something or other. Right?
Yeah, that is referenced in here too. There's another. This is jumping way ahead, but one thing that I think is true is that the part where it says that on Terra is 40 years ahead of anti-Terra. However, some of the technologies that have been existing on anti-Terra from that time, but the events are whatever. So I think 1880 in this time would be like 1920 in American history, and then with the technologies from there being present in 1880 in anti-Terra, which is what explains like telephones, cars.
Yeah. And Demon makes a comment about the stock market booming.
Yes.
Oh, that makes sense then. Like 20.
And World War I would be the war, and even references like on Terra, like their continents are all uglily drawn, whereas anti-Terra is like much easier to picture, which I thought was super funny. But yeah, so he's the Percy Dupre. It's gone off to like fight in the war. Probably going to get killed. Does get killed. Spoiler. But Van's pissed.
Yeah, and then it's kind of, I don't know. I thought it was very funny, like all of the pistol dueling, and like he's like dueling the wrong person.
That's my favorite thing.
And we can get in a second. But then he has this revenge plot of like, so he's gonna duel the person that has nothing to do with any of it, and then the two people that he wants to actually, fight for honor, they both die just like life. He doesn't get to do anything. He's a complete failure, like an absolute like comical failure in this section.
Absolutely, yeah. Percy Dupre dies before he even finds out what his address is. And Mr. Rack, he finally finds him. Well, to go through the plot really quickly, then. So Van like leaves off from Ada and leaves Artis and is like, "No, I'm done with you."
But before that, he doesn't. Blanche throws herself at him, and he does not. He doesn't. He's not seduced.
Yeah.
He's too heartbroken or shattered or, all of the above from the knowledge that Ada is not only for him.
And like, and this is like a perfect like male hypocrisy scene too, in which like he's like, it's not cool that Ada is not faithful to me, and then the way that he tries to like get to his rivals is by banging her friend. Yep. To get that information about her brother, who's already dead. But yeah, it's like it is very clear the male sexual hypocrisy of that stuff right there. Yeah. It is great. Yeah, and so he goes to the weird little town where the Professor Rack or whatever he is, Mr. Rack. These names are wild. They are more wild the more you say them. Mr. Rack and Percy Dupre.
It reminds me like the giddiness. I guess that's not the right word, but just the joy of reading the names of like Pynchon's books or Philip K. Dick's books, where it's like just these absolutely bizarre, bonkers names, and it just heightens everything up. It makes it more fanciful and fun in the reading. I feel like that with a lot of these characters as well.
Absolutely. He's right on, right
Yeah.
on. So he goes to this town as he's getting off the train where he meets Cordula, he bumps into like a colonel and is like fucking punches him and like jacks a different servant in the back, and the guy like slaps and is like like then they declare that they're going to have a duel. They go to fight the duel. He gets his seconds, whatever, and he immediately gets shot in the side. And they take him to the hospital, and that is where, when he's in the hospital, both like trying to mac on the one nurse, with which we can make jokes about in a minute, but then also then he finds out that that's where Mr. Rack is. That Rack's in the hospital because he's sick and dying and doesn't have long for the world. So then he goes and reads what I believe to be one of the greatest like existential threatening speeches in literature. I kind of want to read the whole thing. Someone did mention that one other clue is that in the dinner with Damon and Marina, Damon asked Ada if she wants to be a piano player because he found a handkerchief of Ada's on the piano. Mm-hmm. And that's a hint as well. So there have been like little hints in here. I forget what it was when we first said it, but it was like the apple that he was using and like something else. It seemed like he could be like the affair that she was having, because it referenced that she had a lover that smoked a lot. But yeah, I love that speech that he gives. It's like a Stanley Elkin speech in a way.
There's that, and then the other fantastic, again, the humor was so fantastic in this section. When he's writing the death letters, he's gonna keep in case he gets killed. The letters.
I seduced your daughter.
They're so good.
I'm gonna find that first one.
And then we should read both of them. And then and I love when he does get shot, and then like the taxi driver goes to get the letter. He's like, "Rip it up, you idiot!" Yeah. Take the letter. What are you doing?
It's still alive. Yeah, so the first one is, "Dear Dad, in consequence of a trivial altercation with the Captain Tapper of Wild Violet Lodge," that sounds like a nod back to Lolita, although I might be making that up in my mind, "whom I happen to step upon in the corridor of a train. I had a pistol duel this morning in the woods near Kaluganu, and am now no more. Though the manner of my end may be regarded as a kind of easy suicide, the encounter and the ineffable captain are in no way connected with the sorrows of young Bean. In 1884, during my first summer at Artis, I seduced your daughter, who was then 12. Our torrid affair lasted until my return to River Lane. It was resumed last June, 4 years later. That happiness has been the greatest event in my life, and I have no regrets. Yesterday, though, I discovered she had been unfaithful to me, so we parted. Tapper, I think, maybe the chap who was thrown out of one of your gaming clubs for attempting oral intercourse with the washroom attendant, the toothless old cripple, veteran of the First Crimean War. Lots of flowers, please. Your loving son, man."
So he rereads that, decides to tear it up, and so he puts this in his pocket instead. And this is on 309. "Dad, I had a trivial quarrel with a stranger whose face I slapped and who killed me in a duel near Kulgano. Sorry."
Sorry. Oh my God, it's so good. I was loving this section. It's like, after all of the, like, to be honest, like you mentioned the humor, and there's been humor throughout, but it is like been like, dark and like somewhat foreboding and big and like epic and Russian. And then this part is like, as it all closes that section, closes the bits about that, is just really funny and like fast paced and funny. Like all these people die like one after another.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them is interesting. He's involved with for other symbology reasons, but
yeah, the thesis statement on the beginning of chapter 42, I thought was wonderful to set this all up too, on page 301. Aqua used to say that only a very cruel or very stupid person or innocent infants could be happy on Demonia, our splendid planet.
Yep.
Because obviously by the end of this, we start talking more about Terra.
Yeah, we're gonna get. I'm so excited about that.
I have a funny anecdote that goes great with this section. It's on page 303 at the bottom. "He cleared his throat loudly and ordered half a bottle of cognac, having the waiter open it in his presence as Demon advised." So I had a buddy of mine who at some point he's going to have a biography written about him because he has the most insane life ever. And yep. I swear half these stories are bullshit, and every single one has turned out to be true. I always thought he was just telling like tall tales.
Yeah.
Like he was like a bodyguard in Colombia for somebody who was mining minerals, and he doesn't even know how to like, he's not a military person. He just somehow like works his way into these weird jobs. And one of his jobs was he was a server in Grand Cayman Island at this really nice restaurant. And all these rich people are coming in, and like the super like rich thing to do at the end of the meal is you come by with a cigar cart and a collection of brandies and cognacs.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody wanted to order the Louis XIII, the Louis Trey would be the, and excellent choice, sir. And you'd open it and pour it for them and light the cigar for them. But he said, meanwhile, what they would all do, like him and all their buddies and servers would do, is they'd go back when someone had the key to the liquor locker. They would go back there to where the cart is. And they'd all take turns swigging off this like $5,000 bottle of cognac, like bang, bang, like hitting it, like drinking half of it. And then they would take some cheap like VSOP and pour it back in to fill the bottle up and cap it. And then they would just be like going along the liquor cart to these rich assholes. They like make this big show after a brandy. Oh, this is delicious. This is the one. I'm like pointing to the crowd, like letting them all know that they're drinking the expensive one and savoring it. And meanwhile, they're like, excellent choice, sir. When I read this line, he ordered a half bottle of cognac, having the waiter open it in his presence. As if you're ordering nice cognac, have them open it in your presence because it's probably watered down or it's cheap.
Somehow tainted. I love it. That's so funny.
But
that's
yeah,
so perfect. Oh my God. I have to read part of it. I'm going to try and skip through this, but because it's much longer than I remember, but I love this section. There's the bit with, if you've read The Franchiser by Stanley Elkin, the beginning
part, Kingdom.
What's that?
You turned me on to Magic Kingdom.
Oh yeah, Magic Kingdom is wonderful too.
Yeah,
The Franchiser is also really funny, and it's about a guy like franchises shit, right? Like Mr. Softies and like hotels. He's like a franchiser, but like the reason he can do it is he was gifted like the prime rate of interest for loans against forever. So he never has to pay more than the prime rate of interest. But the way that he gets it, I think it's his grandfather or whomever is gifting him this from his deathbed. And he's like, you know, you could have been, he's like, do you understand how impossible it is that you exist? He's like, you could have been, you were just like one little sperm among so many sperms. It's like pulling out the one grain of sand from all of the ocean sands, and that becomes you somehow. He's like, your existence is so improbable that it never should have come about. And like it goes on and on. And that reminded me of this part where Van goes, I think he writes this because he doesn't, it sounds like he tore up his prepared speech and doesn't read it, I believe. But I'm Van Bean. Hospital records put your age at 30. I thought you were younger, but even so, it is a very early age for a person to die. Half-baked genius, full-fledged scoundrel, or both. As you may guess by the plain but thoughtful trappings of this quiet room, you're an incurable case in one lingo, a rotting rat in another. No oxygen gadget can help you to eschew the agony of agony. Professor Lamort's felicitous pleonasm. I can't pronounce anything today. The physical torments you will be, or indeed are experiencing, must be prodigious, but are nothing in comparison to those of a probable hereafter. The mind of man, by nature a monist, cannot accept two nothings. He knows there has been one nothing, his biological inexistence in the infinite past, for his memory is utterly blank, and that nothingness, being as it were past, is not too hard to endure. But a second nothingness, which perhaps might not be so hard to bear either, is logically unacceptable. When speaking of space, we can imagine a live speck in the limitless oneness of space, but there's no analogy in such a concept with our brief life and time, because however brief, a 30-year-old span is really obscenely brief. Our awareness of being is not a dot in eternity, but a slit, a fissure, a chasm running along the entire breadth of metaphysical time, bisecting it and shining, no matter how narrowly, between the back panel and the fore panel. Therefore, Mr. Rack, we can speak of past time, and in a bigger, more familiar sense, of future time, but we cannot simply expect a second nothing, a second void, a second blank. Oblivion is a one-night performance. We have been to it once, there will be no repeat. We must face, therefore, the possibility of some prolonged form of disorganized consciousness. And this brings me to my main point, Mr. Rack. Eternal Rack, infinite Rackness, may not be much, but one thing is certain. The only consciousness that persists in the hereafter is the consciousness of pain. The little Rack of today is the infinite Rack of tomorrow. We can imagine, I think we should imagine, tiny clusters of particles still retaining Rack's personality, gathering here and there in the here and thereafter, clinging to each other somehow, somewhere, a web of Rack's toothaches here, a bundle of Rack's nightmares there, rather like tiny groups of obscure refugees from some obliterated country huddling together for a little smelly warmth, for dingy charities or shared recollections of nameless tortures in Tartar camps. For an old man, one special little torture must be to wait in a long, long queue before a remote urinal. Well, Rack, I submit that the surviving cells of aging Rackness will form such lines of torment, never reaching the coveted filth hole in the panic and pain of the infinite night. I love that.
That's
so good. Like his next page is like, I want you, nurse. Look at this tower of strength. Like metaphysics to eroticism.
Yeah, no, I see why you would select that passage. It's very reminiscent of some of our favorite stuff we read from Rodrigo, where he takes like a theme and starts finding ways of twisting it and contorting it and returning to it like a coda over and over. It's a very brilliant, smart, funny.
It's
very impressive.
So fun. So then he dies. And then Percy the Prey dies, and Van is freed. He did it. Kind of.
He did nothing. All he did was get shot.
All he did was get shot.
Like, again, like what a fool he! Like he's so brilliant, but he's a fool, right?
Yeah. He doesn't actually accomplish any of these things, and yet his mission is satisfied, so to speak.
Yeah, and like it's already been described. He doesn't really have like pistol skill, and he's challenging an army captain to a duel. Like, what do you think's gonna happen?
Yeah,
which he does
immediately. It's so funny. When are duels outlawed?
I don't know. I always remember like this would have been when I was in college. It was like in the early 2000s. Like 2002, I think. I was finishing up school, and Chappelle Show was like the most popular thing ever at that time. And Charlie Murphy talked about when Rick James slapped him in the face. Open hand slapped him in the face. He's like, if had this been another time, we would have had the duel. Like, somebody has to go. You can't slap a man in the face. Like, you have to shoot each other. Someone's got to go. I'm telling you. A duel, whap! But no, there aren't duels anymore. There's just there's just public shootings now.
Public shootings and also like Twitter flame wars.
Yeah,
that's the duel of the future.
Yeah, it's almost like you get assassinated, like you assassinate someone's public persona or something, more so than their body. But,
essentially that is true. That's not. That doesn't. That rings pretty true, actually. The other part of it I really dug was how many canes he has, and an obsession with having a cane. Which I guess canes
like a dandy of sorts, right? I mean,
yeah. But I love it. I just kept thinking about like having a cane and being able to like just walk up and like smack someone with the cane if you need to, or like poke them. Canes seem like good weapons to just have around. Like,
what was that great line that Demon has when he finds out he's having relations with Percy's cousin? He's like, if you end up marrying that, like someone of that ilk, like I'll destroy you.
Yeah,
they're not on our level.
No, that was really intense. So yeah, there's let's end. That's on the second part, in part 2. But yeah, it says, I saw you enlaced with your little countess near the parking lot. If you marry her, I will disinherit you. They're quite a notch below our set.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like the caste system. So he does hang out with Cordula in her Manhattan flat for a while, and he leaves pregnant with the idea for this book that he's going to write, is what that is. But I was looking up something else, I forget what, and I found that the reference in there is to Madame Bovary. That it starts with a reference to Anna Karenina, and Madame Bovary has this line. So it ends this part with a reference to that, as if it's going from one sort of world master of literature to another. And I forget what the line is. I'd have to find it again, but I forget the line is from Madame Bovary, but it's supposed to echo that.
Okay.
So I wondered about that for a second. Is like maybe in anti-Terra, dudes get pregnant. Like, I don't know. It seems there's maybe flying carpets. I mean, anything's possible at this point.
So, is that the first Flaubert reference that we have in this book? Because it's primarily been Tolstoy, Chekhov, and Proust, right?
Yeah. Flaubert's. I read Madame Bovary in like an old translation ages ago, and I edited Bouvard and Pécuchet. And so if there are Bouvard and Pécuchet references, I might pick up on those. But like even like Sentimental Education, all that stuff was like in college, like 20, 30 years ago now. Oh.
But he's also referencing like Chateaubriand as well.
Chateaubriand as well, yeah, for sure. That one's in here a lot. There was a guy I knew that really wanted us to reprint Chateaubriand, and we never did, but New York Review of Books did one of those books at least.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I would want to, that I just thought of when you mentioned I will disinherit you, he also has an inheritance from Aqua though, right?
But he doesn't get it until he's older. I think he's 21.
But it's referenced in this passage as well, the idea of his father's inheritance and his mother's inheritance, right?
Yep. Okay. Which that's really interesting too to think about. His inheritance from his father is like, aside from money, is like evil. Mm-hmm. The demon is the health seed. So the next part, so part one ends and has been very much like a Russian novel in a sense, and like you could, it's like.
And he like breaks the fourth wall, saying this is going to be a Tolstoy ending.
Yeah.
Of the section. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the other person who's referenced a lot is Pushkin, obviously, and Pushkin has the duel in Eugene Onegin, so that makes sense here too. Then the second part two opens up with like essentially a Thomas Pynchon bit. Like if you go back to that, where like there's this shadowy figures, groups of people who deliver letters specially and personally that use like costumes, and you give them the letter and they bring it to that person, so it's not going through the mail or anything, which is like straight up like
yeah, this was like before Snapchat. This is VPL, baby.
Yeah, VPL.
Letters.
You can slide in my VPL anytime you want. And so she sends him. Ada sends him 4 or 5 letters, I believe, over the course of the time between when he leaves her and when he comes back. And they're dated in here, and they sort of like are explained. So she does say like, okay, neither he nor P was technically my lover, but both are on Terra now, so it does not matter. And she sort of justifies for like, it seems like she got raped by Percy in particular.
Yeah, and these letters are on page 332.
Yeah, so right here.
Yeah.
Where is it? Oh, now I'm not finding it, but I thought that it said that she was like, I only was with him once. As a PA, I could explain my submitting to his kisses, first tender and plain, later growing fiercely expert, and finally tasting of me when he returned to my mouth, a vicious circle set spinning in early Thargelian, 1888, by saying that I'd stop seeing him, he would divulge my affair with my cousin to my mother. So she's blackmailed by Percy. I thought there was one more line. I'm not finding it.
That really does seem to fit the theme with Ada, because she's been exploited in every turn.
Here it is.
With people stealing looks at her when she's innocently grabbing, like when she's up on the ladder and people are looking up her skirt, when she's seduced by the devil, right? By Van, or by this person exploiting her. I don't know what the piano teacher, what the relationship was with them, but again, older and it's a student, and there's that she's been taken advantage of by every single person so far in this book.
Absolutely. Here's the line I was looking for. I can swear, however, Salam Ada can swear that in the course of our Sylvan tryst, I successfully evaded, if not pollution, at least possession, before and after he returned to Artis, except for one messy occasion when he half took me by force, the overeager dead man. That's what I was thinking, that she is, being like you say, like things are being stolen from her and exploited. And also, like, he's sort of blackmailing her, like, I'll tell everyone that you're fucking your cousin. And then he more or less, I'm going to assume that he's sort of, that he's more forceful than that. This wasn't like, and she sort of does that. She explains too that they're in California, where they're filming movies, and she's in movies now too. She is a incidental waitress in a fourth-rate Western, hip swinging between table slapping drunks. I just immediately thought, I just started envisioning her as the woman from Westworld.
Okay.
What's her name? Oh my God, I have such a crush on her. I can't think of her name. Evan Rachel Wood.
Oh, okay. No relation.
Damn it, I was hoping you'd be like, that's my second cousin. I'd be like, I'm in love with your second cousin.
Yeah, there you go.
That'll be cool. That'll go over well. Yeah, so this
person I fell in love with on Westworld was Ed Harris. Oh, he's such a strong looking cowboy.
He's good in that. He's good. I'm there for that too. The last part of this, so
I find it hard to believe that somebody would be exploited in Hollywood. Yeah. That an actor would be exploited in Los Angeles. That just doesn't ring true for me.
That's fiction.
Yeah.
That's a fiction part of it. Why did I bend this over? I don't know what my deal was. I didn't write any notes, but I really made a note of, oh, this is it. I know exactly what it was. I folded over the 334 for California ? Because it says, at the end, I could be instantly saved by you. Take the fastest flying machine you can rent straight to El Paso. Your auto will be waiting for you there, waving like mad, and will continue by the New World Express in a suite I'll obtain to the burning tip of Patagonia, Captain Grant's horn, a villa in Verna, my jewel, my agony. Send me an aerogram with one Russian word and my name and wit. Okay, so the things that stood out to me here was that the fastest flying machine you can rent, because there was that earlier thing to like reference to like flying carpets, which I was like, I don't know what this is, like if this is in the world. So that's a strange phrasing, but this is the first time California is a real place. They do say Hollywood in here, correct?
I thought so, yeah.
I thought so too, and I don't see it. But then El Paso is a real place, and Patagonia is a real place. I don't know what Captain Grant's horn, but sure, maybe. But these are the first time that these places are real. All the other places, like even Maine is spelled wrong. All the towns that they're in on like the East Coast are like weird, half Russian, half whatever. This is the first like American one. And I was thinking about that in relation to that Hollywood and California is imagined in a sense, and like is imaginary, and is supposed to be the heart of like those kind of imaginations and like creations of things to allow people to dream, to see things that are not real. And there's something that I think that ties into for like this Terra anti-Terra dichotomy, that these are places that they're real within their world because they're places of illusion, of the creation of illusion.
And there's an end note on Captain Grant. That's a Jules Verne reference.
It's a what?
Jules Verne reference.
There's so many Jules Verne references.
Yeah, as you're talking about things being imaginary, that rings very true right there.
Oh yeah, yep, right there.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, because I was trying to figure that. I was trying to think about that. It's like, why are those the cities? Which cities are real that get mentioned and which ones are not?
Well, this is kind of an interesting place that I think you're picking up on this. And I'm obviously having not read any further and only on my first reading, I think it's really interesting that we're starting to blur the lines of what's real and not real as we start learning more about Terra.
Yeah.
So, well, it's almost like he's kind of primering us as readers for the books, Letters from Terra, and the later book as well. We start getting into the books that they're writing. It's interesting that they're starting to kind of reference more real, grounded, real places that we know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Even like, where does he meet his dad? Where they keep getting Goodson Airport. That's not real. Or maybe that's real. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, so he gets all those letters. He thinks that there's a lot more, and then we only had this. He's looking back and being like, "It's crazy. There's only 5, and like a 6th one that he remembers that got destroyed or whatever." But like that, he in his mind there were like dozens of these letters, which is another idea of like time coming up here, because time's starting to play like a central role. Like the reason I really wanted to mention to that the existential sort of threat against Rack is that we know from Rodrigo and from like just general that Van has an obsession with time and like has a theory about time, and that time was all what that theory was. The idea that like you could look to the past and be like, there was a nothing, there was a, that's in the past because I didn't exist yet. But once I started existing, there can't be another one of those.
Yeah.
That's not fair, essentially, or that's not comprehensible. That like on and time goes by forever.
This little gem from 337 at the end. Many years later, when working on his Texture of Time, Van found in that phenomenon additional proof of real times being connected with the interval between events, not with their passage, not with their bending, not with their shading the gap wherein the pure and impenetrable texture of time transpires.
I marked that too as like, I think that's really interesting, and I'm not sure I understand it.
Me neither.
Okay.
He told himself he would be firm and suffer in silence. I assume that's obviously talking about not being able to be with Ada and willing to wait it out until basically everybody dies and they can be together, which would be 40, 50 years, or however long amount of time. But this strange notion of like courtly love. That
is this essentially, let's try and break this down for a second. Okay, so later he's going to write this book, Texture of Time. He finds that in that phenomenon, whatever phenomenon that is, who cares, additional proof of real time being connected with the interval between events, not with their passage. So essentially, time is the gap between the things that are real.
The waiting.
The waiting is the real time, but the event that's happening happens outside of time, perhaps.
Okay.
Ooh, anyone who's listening to this that's read this and knows what the real answer is, like, I know I sound like a moron, but we're just going to go with this. Not with their blending, not with their shading the gap wherein the pure and impenetrable texture of time transpires. Yeah, so like essentially, it seems to me like what it's saying is that the events are the thing, and the time is the passage between those events, almost like a necklace, like a pearl necklace, but the pearl being the events and the time being the string in between them, rather than the passage of those events. Or the thinking of it. I don't know. I think time's going to get real, like Quentin Compson soon.
Well, what a great point that is, though. The dying duelist dies a happier man than his live foe ever will be. Right? Because if the real thing happens in between the events, like you have to suffer, you have to wait out this terrible, like boredom, loneliness, agony, anguish, whatever those feelings are all in between the moments of ecstasy, because those are fleeting and they're gone. And the thing that lasts and is there is what's in between.
Or is it saying that those events take place outside of time, in the sense that if you die during a duel, that is just the end, that's the time. There's no more time going on.
Sure.
I don't know. I know people are going to be laughing at this, which fine, whatever. Have fun. So he gets those letters.
You ever watched True Detective?
Oh yeah, yeah.
This sounds like something that Matthew McConaughey would be like, tapping his cigarette into a cut-up beer tall boy talking about time, the texture of time. I can't do a Matthew McConaughey voice, but it's a flat circle. Yep. You have to have a big hug mug.
That season was super fun.
Yeah.
That was super fun. So
when they get into the books, this has to be the absolute greatest blurb ever. And I really, 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 if they still put blurbs on the covers of books, I want this on my next book. It's on page 338. It's a nice little book! Exclamation mark. That's Ada's note.
Yep.
I disagree. It's a nice little book. I might even add, I disagree. For the book, I disagree.
It's a nice little book. Oh my
Imagine
God.
how great that would look on the cover of a book. It says, I disagree. It's a nice little book.
So funny. So
I think
funny.
a publisher would ever let that fly, but man, that would be so cool.
I have a Ishmael Reed book that just has all the anti-Ishmael Reed quotes on it.
Well, that's Ishmael Reed. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's cool. That totally works.
Yeah,
But
it's true.
that's my when we pick favorite lines. That's my favorite line of this.
Oh
I disagree. It's a nice little book.
So good. So this is his book called Letters from Terra, which is, I don't know. So it's a fiction book. Wait, I got to read. Oh, no, I'll say that for later.
It's a philosophical novel.
It's a philosophical novel about Terra, and we get a little bit more information about Terra. So Terra being, I've been told that everyone disagrees. This is a nice little podcast.
Perfect. That's what we're going for.
Well played.
There was an effort.
So there are the reference to Terra. So it's a planet, maybe connected to our planet, could be heaven, whatever. That there are 3 cosmologists whose books were banned or burned, whatever. Zertany, Yates, and Zotov, all pen names XYZ, who had recklessly started the whole business half a century earlier, causing and endorsing panic, demoncy, and execrable romantics. The 3 scientists had vanished now. X had committed suicide, Y had been kidnapped by a laundryman and transported to Tartary, and Z, a ruddy white-whiskered old sport, was driving his Yakima jailers crazy by means of incomprehensible crepitations, ceaseless invention of invisible inks, chameleonizations, nerve signals, spirals of outgoing light, and feats of ventriloquism that imitated pistol shots and sirens. This is straight Pynchon now. This is like against the day. Dealing with like these kind of ideas. It's wild. Like I would never thought I would say that, because there's 2 vastly different approaches to literature. One that's like takes it seriously but has fun, and the other one that's like the seriousness is in the fun, or is in the ideas. But like this is just you could lift this and put this in against the idea of it and the sort of like joke of it, and it would totally fit.
Now you've read more Nabokov than I have. Is this unlike anything he's done before? This kind of tone and style?
The only thing that would be sort of close in a way might be the 2 political books, Invitation to Beheading and Ben Sinister, where they're also like alternate realities.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit like Ben Sinister has some funny ass shit in it, like really funny, like mocking of bureaucracy. And it's basically like Idiocracy in book form from 40 years ago, right? Like it's about like a guy that's so dumb that takes over as like president or ruler of this country, and people just go along because they're like, yeah, you're a good guy, man. You got it. Like we're all dumb. It's okay to be dumb. Being smart is bad. But so it has a little bit of it in there. But like I don't know. There's like the jokes and the fun stuff that he has in other books doesn't have this sort of thing. It's not like sci-fi invented. It's usually funny because of like the situation or like the characters' foibles, right? Or like the characters' like unreliability or like way to like explain themselves. And by explaining themselves, it's funny because they're not just saying like, I want to bang a 12-year-old.
Sure. I'm sure we can get into it probably maybe on the last episode or close to the last episode after we've gone through the whole thing. But I'm really curious the time and the place when Nabokov wrote this and how it informed some of the choices he's making and going in the direction he's going. Because to me, it feels like really wild and far out and free, more so than some of the like strict gamesmanship that he has, like the structure and the box that he plays inside of in some of his other works. I feel like this one seems just very expansive and wild and crazy and open.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's because of the time and the place of his career when he wrote it.
The 1960s were a really good drug, man.
That's true.
Another health throwback. And
I'm just wondering, with him being wealthy and he could do what he wanted, right? If this is maybe something he always kind of wanted to do and never had maybe the freedom to do it necessarily.
I've been avoiding like reading anything about this book for the sheer reason that I want to
I
experience.
all I read was the New York Times review from 1969 or whatever. It's the only thing I've read on it.
And when he like replied and was like, or that was when he replied to that Rodrigo told us, where he's like, you didn't realize that these people are evil.
I don't know if that's the one or not, but that's.
I don't remember either.
It's a very short review. Not very.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I think I've read that too. But I know that there's 2 books that he was working on, and they became this.
Yeah.
And then I do have a book by I don't know where it is. The woman who wrote Reading Lolita in Tehran.
Okay.
Easier, I think that's right. And it was her dissertation in Iran on Nabokov. And so she goes through a number of the books, and I've read everything up to the Lolita section. And there's like Lolita and then ARDOR. And I think that she might have some information in there too that will be useful. I would love to have her come on here if I could figure out how to get a hold of her. And I want to read that last section of her book before we do our final episode.
Well, it'll be a fun final episode, because we can actually start looking at some of the academic essays and some of the critique of the book. It'll be really cool to see everything we got wrong.
Maybe we should do a bonus episode that's just that.
Yeah, I definitely want to.
That would be cool. So yeah, so he writes this novel. What was part of the novel? One thing I'm gonna ask you because I figured it out. So he this Teresa Madden. So Teresa is from Terra. She's sending messages to a scientist. His anagram, the scientist's name, his anagram-looking name, Sig Lemansky. Any guesses? Had been partly derived from Van from that of Aqua's Last Doctor.
Is it 340 or 341? Where is that at?
340. Top of 340.
Top of 340. Sig Lemansky. I did not look into that. I'm looking at it right now. I can't. It's
a hard one, maybe.
Okay.
There is a reference somewhere. Okay, I think it's in the notes. Let me see if I'm right. It says Sig Lemansky, anagram of the name of a waggish British novelist, keenly interested in physics fiction.
Physics fiction. British novelist, Sig Lemansky. Nah.
Kingsley Amis.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Which, interesting segue, has been reprinted by New York Review of Books, who also is reprinting JR by William Gaddis, which is the next book for the 2-month review. Boom, that's how you podcast.
Nice to you. Nice to
you. And according to one of the listeners, this was intentionally the Kingsley Amis is referenced here because of Kingsley Amis's dismissal of Lolita in a review.
Ah.
So all fun stuff. So yeah, so this Terra, anti-Terra thing, I'm just going to read this one paragraph because it sort of explains. So Teresa is on Terra sending messages to Sig. After beaming to Sig a dozen communications from her planet, Teresa flies over to him, and he, in his laboratory, has to place her on a slide under a powerful microscope in order to make out the tiny, though otherwise perfect shape of his Minikin sweetheart, a graceful microorganism extending transparent appendages toward his huge humid eye. Alas, the Restobulus testicule, never to be confused with testiculus orchid, with Teresa swimming inside like a micro mermaid, is accidentally thrown away by Professor Layman's, he had trimmed his name by that time, assistant, Flora, initially an ivory-pale, dark-haired Funis beauty, whom the author transformed just in time into a third bromidic dummy with a dun bun.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this is like unlike anything I've ever read from him.
Yeah, it's like speculative sci-fi type of thing. I mean, even like the references inside it are sci-fi in that way.
Yeah, and part 2 to me is such a shift from this kind of like Eden-esque, gardens and high tea kind of that world, and then we're switching to this. I don't know. The sci-fi elements are really pushed in part 2 so far.
Yeah, especially now. Like the part 2's got me really excited because it's like dove right into this like weird Pinchonian world, which I dig. Like
it's entered the atomic age, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, and Professor Layman equals layman, which is to sort of disarm that. This is the other thing that's in here. So on Terra, Teresa had been a roving reporter for an American magazine, thus giving Van the opportunity to describe the sibling planet's political aspect. This aspect gave him the least trouble, presenting it as it did a mosaic of painstakingly collated notes from his own reports on the transcendental delirium of his patients. Its acoustics were poor, proper names often came out garbled, a chaotic calendar messed up the order of events, but on the whole, the colored dots did form a geomantic picture of sorts. As early experimenters had conjectured, our annals lagged by about half a century behind Terra's along the bridges of time, but overtook some of its underwater currents. That's where I was getting that from, of like that there's a gap in time. And so reframing this, Van did his master's degree or doctorate on crazy people that believed in Terra and were giving him like information, which he then isn't sure that Terra is real or not, and creates a sci-fi philosophical novel in which there's a character from Terra who is in love with beaming messages to the scientist, who then takes and can explain like what's going on in Terra.
Yeah.
I fucking love this. I also believe that there should be a new, I want to start a change.org thing. What do you call those? Petitions? Where I want the Maryland Terrapins to become the Maryland Terrapists.
Okay.
No one cares about turtles. I want them to be representatives of a fake other world in a Nabokov novel. Who's going to sign this with me? Oh, where is it that it references that he sold 6 copies of his book? Oh.
Yeah, I thought you were, when I started reading stuff about publishers, I'm like, oh, we better not spend half the podcast talking about the crappy publishers and the lack of book sales. And I'll do the blurb part because the blurb's fantastic. Hate it.
It's just this part where like, it's so funny. It's so funny. When he learned from a careful study of statement of sales, which his stooges sent him in February 1892, then 12 months, only 6 copies had been sold, 2 in England and 4 in America. Statistically speaking, no reviews could have been expected, given the unorthodox circumstances in which poor Terra's correspondence had been handled. But he ends up with 1 because his publicist is like banging the writer. It's like, can you just write this?
That made me feel, I like, oh, good. He only sold 6 copies. That makes me feel a lot better.
And there's another reference to Borges in here, which finally like clarified. If this had been the first reference to Osberg, I would have gotten it right away. Spanish writer of pretentious fairy tales and mystical allegoric anecdotes, highly esteemed by short shrift thealists. Thessalialis. I don't know what that is, but yeah, I would have gotten that. If that were the first reference, I would have been like, oh, it's Borges. But
yeah,
this time it's like, oh, clearly Borges.
Don't people like to do that with like games and riddles though? Like, if you don't get it right away, well, it's clearly this. How do you know it? Well, yeah, that's like you already have it figured out. Like, of course, it's clearly that because you're looking at it from a different vantage point.
Yep. Yeah, it's very true.
I got it right away. Well, I'm still working on it.
Yeah,
I'll get there.
I'm not very good at crossword puzzles or Scrabble.
Yeah. Well, I have to get off here soon, but
do you have a favorite line that you want to share aside from them, or you already shared your one?
No, mine is totally the I disagree. It's a nice little book.
Yeah.
Sounds like my mom when she read my first book. This is the book. Great job.
Actually, mine's weird. So here's my favorite. And that is perfect. I love that. That is exactly like, I don't think my parents know what I do. I think my parents think my job is to read books.
Right on. It kind of is.
Yes.
Sure.
A third letter here, this is on page 3. What's that?
My mom still tells people he journals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you journal.
He writes blogs sometimes. He journals. I'm like, Mom, I don't do either of those things. I don't have a blog. I love you, Mom. Thank you, though. I do clack on a keyboard from time to time. Thank you.
We do. There is a new post. I haven't written a post in forever, but there's a post on 3% now of like some October books and reasons why I haven't written about anything, which is just not reasons about why I haven't written it so much as like a bunch of ideas for things I'll never be able to write. So
all right. Let's get your favorite quote out of the way, because someone's listening to this on a treadmill. They're dying right now.
317.
317.
A third letter he addressed to Bernard Ratner, his closest friend at Chose, the great Ratner's nephew. Ratner's who he's been reading about for anti-Terra and Terra stuff this whole time. Your uncle has most honest standards, he wrote in a post, in part, but I am going to demolish him soon. That's my favorite line from this. It's like this weird, like, yeah, your uncle's written about all these good stuff. I'm gonna wreck him. There. It's a literary vengeance. So for next week, we're gonna go we've got 5 episodes left. And next we go through page 395, which is chapters 3 through 6 of part 2. So we're still being in this part, but I'm really getting into this now. Like I really liked it from the beginning, but this like sort of weird shift into like a more 60s playful, I don't know what you want to call it, is really interesting and really fun.
Yeah, I like it. Again, I feel like we went from like gunpowder to microwaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's become atomic or something, or the way sci-fi changes with modernism to postmodernism.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So anything else you want to say before we go?
No, that's it. Looking forward to it. We didn't even get into the whole thing about abortion in this section with the Supreme Court going on. That'd been very timely, but I don't even want to think about it. So
no, I don't want to.
Let's move on.
Let's get away. We can talk about baseball.
Well, till the next dumpster fire. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, by next week we'll know who's in the World Series too.
Who cares? Well, who cares?
Jose Altuve's got the yips.
All right.